We now come on to the French defence, where black kind of avoids playing Queen b6, but instead plays the second most popular line, and a variation I also play with black when I play against the advanced French. I might have to change that a little bit now, but with bishop d7 ideas. So the bishop comes out to d7, but black avoids playing queen b6. The good thing about these lines are really that black's ideas with f6 are not as effective. That's the way I play the positions later on. I'll explain it to you then, because we're putting our bishop on d3, and the bishop on d3, it really hits across this f6 move because of the weaknesses towards black's king. And if black tries to do anything unique, then they're not very good. And if he plays queen b6, we're back into the next chapter. So we're actually saving quite a lot of work. We're simplifying our task and making this gambit even more attractive because there's not so much to learn. So let's have a look on with the moves. So we're going to go with our advanced French and now c3. And here, again, knight c6 is our main move. Now briefly, we could consider this bishop d7 move, which we've looked at already a little bit with some ideas of going bishop b5. Again, we can just have a look at it again here, just so you're covered for it. I think it's a good idea to do so. You probably won't face this idea, and if you do, black will probably bring the knight out to c6 quickly anyway. But here now we play knight to f3, our usual move, and the only unique option really that we haven't considered is queen b6. Everything else leads into what we're expecting. Knight c6 transposes to later on in this video, and after queen b6, we shouldn't be deferred from playing our normal placement for our bishop, the most aggressive square, bishop d3. And here still the most likely move is for black to play knight c6 and to go back into those variations there, which are our main lines we're coming up to. The only unique option, I would say, is mainly bishop b5. And we should also consider what happens if black takes on d4 first. Now, in keeping with our course, rather than simply exchanging here, which allows basically bishop b5, and we don't really want to sort of run into that straight away. We can do, it's all right. But there's another interesting option which fits in with our gambit idea. And this is an idea of Johnny Hector, who's one of our heroes throughout this course, with this grandmaster from Sweden with his exciting gambits. And the idea is just to castle here. And this is what we're doing in our main lines when the knight's on c6, as in our introductory game. We're castling, and we're hoping for pawn takes pawn, knight takes here, where we get a zooped up Milner Barry. And we have bishop quickly coming to e3 in this position, which gives us lots of compensation. For example, knight c6, bishop e3. And we've already seen this kind of idea before. So after c takes, I like this castling move. And now the only unique move here that doesn't lead to the next video is bishop b5. The main point, and again, one of the reasons, as I mentioned, these lines are quite attractive, is that if, against most of black's moves, we're just going into the main line. So, for example, knight c6 leads to that Magnus Carlsen Harry Krishna game, where we play now knight on b to d2, as Magnus played. And this fits in with our idea of bringing the knight to d4, as in the model game, and playing on the b file with great play for a sacrificed pawn. And again, we look at this in the next theory section, lots of transpositions. So now bishop b5 is sort of a unique try. And Well, I mean, we can now take on b5 and play just c takes d4. And actually, this is just the simplest way to play. Now, just to go back to this moment here, the reason we're not taking on d4 here is not actually because of bishop b5, because that will transpose really to what we're looking at, except we have castled. So let's just point out in this position we haven't castled, so it's a bit harder for us to do that. That's why one of the reasons we're castling first. But the other reason is that if we do take back on d4 here, rather than castling, black can play knight c6, and this is a line that we avoid. We don't really want to get into this position because we're not generally taking back on d4, right? We're just allowing that capture to happen. So after castles, the difference being bishop b5, okay, now we take here, and because we've castled in this position, and because black's played this bishop b5 move, taking on d4 seems like a safe way to get an advantage here. Black has managed to get rid of his worst piece, but we've castled, we've got development, we've got the knight coming to a very attractive square, play on the c file, and this is nice. So for example, knight c6, knight c3, queen b6, keeping a bit of pressure here. And now I'd like to move queen d3. And this is just trying to simply develop with bishop d2, get a rook to the c file, and then one of our main ideas at some point is to push our pawns on the queen side. So in these lines, when the light square bishop gets exchanged off early on, which is very rare, we are often playing on the queen side. So, you know, because without our light square bishop, an attack on the king side is less attractive, but that doesn't matter because we get lots of nice, easy space. And now knight e7, the main move, knight b4, we actually move the queen to b1, and this doesn't, you know, inconvene us because we're going to go a3 and b4. It kind of helps us, if anything. So let's have a look at a normal developing move like knight e7. Again, some of the lines have looked a bit more detailed in the move trainer, but just to get the ideas across, we don't need to go there now. And here, well, I like bishop d2, and this is just finishing our development. And also, we're giving black a chance to go wrong, because if black now goes knight to f5, and this is another little reason the queen has gone to this square, we can go knight takes d5, and suddenly black is in trouble. And actually the funny thing here is, as well as playing on the queen side, we can combine it with king side play now that black's put the knight on this square, because we've got to ask black, well, where are you going to put that knight? So we can play on both areas of the board. And also, let's not forget a very nice maneuver in these positions when the knight's on c3, queen's on b6, knight to a4, coming into c5. So knight to a4, coming into c5. So all these little lines, I feel, are quite pleasant for us. Now let's say a6. If black commits this knight anywhere on the king side, well, I think we should now just do some little king side ideas. Like, for example, f5, we win a pawn. And here, if you can play this next move, then you nearly always should do when the knight goes to g6. And again, you can probably guess the move, h4. This is just a very nice way to try and embarrass that knight. And you're really saying, well, why have you put your knight there? It always helps us to get a pawn to h5. We do get play on that area of the board. If we can play that, obviously black's plan is backfired. And if black goes h5 here to stop that, I would just play g3. And we have a very strong formation. And the point of this idea is now, if black castles kingside, where else is going to castle? This h5 pawn is very weak. And it's going to be a target for either our knight at some point or our queen. And it just weakens black's position. Because do remember that the pawn move that black wants to often play in these positions, now that he's played pawn break number 1, c5, is f6. And f6 here can never really be played because the knight's always on pre. And we've got lots of ideas. Again, we're playing on both areas of the board, and our other idea is just knight a4, rook c1, and knight c5. So we're playing on both areas with the advantage. So this queen on d3 is nicely positioned, right? You can see how it helps and clears the rank. So it's all good. Now, do remember that also black is not advised to take here for a number of reasons. You've got rook b1 and taking here, but even stronger is knight b5. When you're threatening to win the queen, threatening c7, threatening d6, that's 3 threats in 1. Do we have any more? Yeah, bishop c3 winning the queen, 4 threats in 1. I can't do better than that, can I? So let's say a6, and it's not clear what black can do here. And in this position, actually, I think a very clever idea is, there's lots of tempting moves, but black's intending to meet this one with queen b5 now. Probably all right for us, but don't really want to allow him to swap off those quite yet. And here I actually like rook b1, because again, we're playing on both sides. We don't need to play a3 here. In actual fact, our rook's going to be much better behind that pawn, because we might have ideas when it gets to b4 to go to b5. And we're going to get this pawn break in. I doubt the black knight can take it because of the pin. And we're playing on both areas. Remember, if the knight comes here, we can go h4. How does black finish his development? If he plays knight b4 to try and block us, well, we now have a very strong idea. And now we can play knight to a4. And black doesn't have a good response against this all of a sudden. This is a little trick worth remembering, and we can see one of the advantages of the bishop going here. And after the queen's come off, the rook has to move, and now b4, the black knight is trapped. Rook b3 is coming at some point to just win that knight. So this is very nice. So going back to bishop d7 immediately, which is not the main move, we can just do normal stuff. Knight f3, queen b6, bishop d3, and one of the main points here is that if pawn takes pawn, we castle. This is the key idea, and this means we're going to always be castle. Black can't stop that, and we've got happy future ahead. Now, if we have a look at black's other options, well, what if he goes bishop b5 straight away? He wants to get this exchange of bishops, but he wants to get it in maybe a slightly superior way to the way we just looked at, and with us not castling. But we don't need to fear this bishop exchange, because black's lost a lot of time playing it. Like before, it's not quite as good for us as before, but it's still good. And here, I think we should actually just take on c5 now. So what we're aiming to do is to go like b4 and put a knight on d4 in this variation. d4 is such an important square for us in these French advanced lines. We're trying to get a knight to that square. In the main lines, it's a knight on b1, but don't forget the other knight can get there. And now bishop c5, there's a very nice move now that I feel makes this whole variation work. If we had to castle, do something else, maybe black's okay, but this move b4. And the key point of this is, if black can't take on f2, well, we're gaining very nice tempo. And he can't take on f2 because after king e2, yeah, our king has moved, but his bishop is actually trapped. And let's just say bishop takes bishop, queen takes here. And black simply doesn't have a good way to stop rook f1, and we're winning the whole piece. Our king is absolutely safe. There's nothing attacking it. This has taken a couple of IMs down before. So the bishop is not threatening to take it. So let's just go b4, right? And now bishop takes d3, I feel is correct here. So we don't get knight d4 with tempo. Let's have a look what happens if that bishop goes back. So both bishop f8 and bishop e7 can be dealt with in the same way, really. Let's put it doesn't matter so much. Let's put it on e7. You can look at f8 in the move trainer. Well, first of all, I can now take at some point and put a knight on d4. That tempo we said, but there's an even better way of playing this now. And I like bishop e3 against these moves because we gain a tempo first. The queen has to go somewhere like a6. And actually now, rather than doing this idea, which is fine because you can go queen g4, but another idea I really like is bishop c2. And we get a chance to keep the bishops on the board. And the problem black has is we're going to get that bishop often for this knight. Our main idea, a4, and if the bishop comes to c4, we're going to just take that bishop off, leaving us with our strong attacking unit on c2. For example, b6, a4, and now if it comes here, well, we're just going to, if it comes to c4, we're just going to literally take it, and that's lovely. And if it comes back, what is black actually doing? And after knight bd2, we got everything we want. We have retained this bishop. We got the d4 square. It's something like queen c8, trying to do something. Then I like b5, stopping that knight from getting in the game. We're playing on both areas of the board, and this is a nice advantage for us. So in this position, b4 is really critical, and I think white should get rid of our bishop while we get a chance, because as well as taking and getting this square, the problem with moving the dark square bishop now for black is that we don't actually have to swap light square bishops. We can move it back to c2. So let's say black takes on d3, and here we shouldn't take the other bishop. We should get rid of it. And now the bishop moves back. I actually think that f8 is a better square, because this allows the black knight to come to e7. In this case, you can look at bishop e7 in the move trainer. And this now goes that other lines we first mentioned. Let's gain a tempo first, where we can use this d4 square at some point. We have good development, but black's got rid of our best minor piece. So something like queen c7, let's castle. And now simple development, something like knight e7. The best square for our knight will be d4. I mean, we could go for this plan here, but I like knight a3. Let's keep the initiative up, trying to come to this square, forcing a6. And now another idea, we don't have to play even slowly with knight here and f4, f5, which would be better for us. Because again, black's badly developed. We should, and we're fully developed castled, we should be aware and looking for ways to break this position down. And by playing c4, we're opening up lines at the right moment. Trying to get to the king. Something like knight c6. You don't want to allow the white knight to travel into d6. And now bishop c5 I really like. This is Eric Hansen, I believe, playing, or maybe Torbjörn Hansen, my friend, actually. It's a Hansen against Grandmaster Julius in 2006. And, well, with the bishop coming in here, black's really got to try grabbing that pawn. But after rook e1 and rook d1, yes, we're a pawn down, but look at that pressure in the center of the board we're exerting, and black hasn't castled, so this is a strong initiative. So bishop takes d3, queen takes, and we just got this idea developing and playing. I like the c4 move. C4 move at the right time is very useful when we've fully developed. Is there anything else to know here? Well, not really. And again, I don't want to overcomplicate it in these videos, but let's just bear in mind, against bishop d7, the only thing we really have to remember, we do our normal plan, bishop d3. If black takes on d4 immediately, let's castle, because we're normally doing this. If black plays bishop b5 straight away, we can now take on c5, and this has a particular point to it. And the particular point, and the reason we're doing this, is that after bishop takes, we can go b4. If the dark square bishop moves again here, then we can go bishop c2, and we keep that bishop. And if you take on d3, we get this really active play in these positions with bishop e3, knight a3, castles, c4. So nice ideas. So back to knight c6, which I think invariably your opponents will play. Knight f3, and now bishop d7. This is what this one's about. We now put our bishop on d3, and this is a move that's putting black off playing f6, because the main line here is actually bishop e2, where white doesn't want to sacrifice this pawn. But then f6 is a lot stronger, because you can see our bishop would be much better on d3. And actually in these positions, black often has to face bishop d3. So going bishop d3 straight away certainly should put black off playing f6. Let's have a look at f6 here when we have that extra tempo. Well, I don't want to free up black's pieces by taking that. I want to just castle. And even though the very strong player Roman Edouard of France has played this as black, I really don't like it as black. And even the main lines I'm starting to doubt when white's the tempo down with this. But after f takes e5, well, as I mentioned earlier on in some of the introductions to the French, you can take with the d pawn and be better. But also knight takes here it is very nice because we're threatening this big check here. We have a strong initiative, and now black really has to get rid of our good knight. And after this one, he still doesn't have this square. We're threatening the check, so something like knight e7. And now let's try to make black's position as difficult as possible, and bishop g5 does that perfectly. With the queen coming over here, threatening to create some dark square weaknesses. We want this move to be played so our bishop can come in, and we have a very easy game. The knight has this square, f4, f5 is coming. So f6 actually is not good. And queen b6 is the main move, but this will be analysed, this position, in the next video, because this is what we can say is obviously the main variation. Rook c8 is a move that I've played as black because I played this quite a lot in blitz games. You might know about my matches against Ben Feingold, and I played this. But in actual fact, now castling is suggested way, our suggested way to play, because it fits in with what our setups. We can also take on c5 and go b4. That's really worth investigating. But let's keep it with what we know. And after castles, the important thing to remember is that c takes d4. Again, we're not going to meet this with pawn takes pawn. And this is something that you've got to always think about. Don't be automatic in taking back there, because you're going to get out of all our theory. If you automatically take there, we're not doing that. We're actually using this as a pawn sack. We actually want black to come and take here because we want to get a knight to that square in most lines. And Ben Feingold played this against me in that match, and I feel that after knight b4, because black is getting rid of our attacking piece, black will be able to castle kingside safely here, and black's absolutely fine. So the move we're going to recommend is rook e1. And this is actually Layla's choice, and Stockfish approves. We'll see this kind of position more. And another Hector idea, and we're going to follow again Hector Brunel Swedish Championships 2008. And this just fits in with our idea. Rook e1's always a useful move, right? Defends our pawn, and it makes black's f6 move a lot harder to play because our rook's going to be lined up. And let's not be worried about losing that pawn, because it's black who's got to find a plan in these positions. We've got much more flowing development. Now, knight e7, I think, is best. This is the difference between this and the next video is obviously black hasn't committed his queen. Now, after rook e1, what about if he takes on c3? You might get this sometimes, and we're very happy to see this, because after knight takes c3, this is actually even better than our main lines where this knight comes to d4. That takes 3 moves, but our knight gets to an active square in 1 move here. And now something like knight b5 is annoying, so a6 is often played. And now bishop e3 I like. And this is, you've got to think if this bishop goes to which one of these squares. But one of the reasons we're playing this gambit, again, like half the gambits in this course are just right for the throat. The other half are actually a bit like the wing gambit a lot of time in the Sicilian. We're thinking, what are you playing, black? Okay, well, black wants to play bishop c5. Okay, well, I'm actually a pawn down, but I'm positionally trying to outplay you. This pawn sacrifice is enduring long-term pawn sacrifice. And now black's got to figure a way to develop the king side, right? So what does he do? And we can sort of go h4, h5, make it a little bit more difficult over there. We don't need to panic. We can play on the other side of the board as well. Knight a4 is an idea well worth considering with b6, but let's have a look at a little bit more. Let's say knight e7. h4 is an idea, but knight a4 is the other idea we mentioned. Now that a6 has been played, this move could be even stronger. Bishop b6 is a real big threat. So after b5, bishop b6 wins. And if we can get a knight to that square, it's tremendous as well. So black now has to play d4. And this is trying to give back that pawn to free up at least some square on c6. And I think black has to play this, but how many players of the black side will want to play this move here? I don't know. And black is maybe will find this because if he realizes how much trouble he's in. But after d4, I still like our position after this one. And now, well, if he does try this kind of idea, it doesn't work enough because of a number of moves here. And I'll look at our development. Bishop e4, bishop b6, both good. So knight takes e5 is best, trying to still use the square. And now I like bishop e4 again. And we're actually now pressurizing on the queen side mainly. And we had that awesome development here. So going back to this position, if rook c8, then we just castle. And if pawn takes pawn, rook e1. And now knight e7 seems like a more logical move rather than helping our knight in the game. And this is one case where we don't have this knight a4 idea. So we can now look on the other side of the board. And remember, the great way to meet this move is as Hector played h4. And this is aimed at, you know, making sure that knight can't find a home and the bishop can't find, therefore, a home. And after something like h6 here, well, we can now just play on the other side of the board. a3, useful little move. And I feel that black has to take on c3. Otherwise, we've got low... Well, again, get into the mind what your opponent can play. He can't really play many moves. If he goes here, we're going to take that knight. It's very nice for us. If he goes to g6, we're going h5. He has to go back. And at some point when he takes here, knight takes a6, as we've seen, we can even come this way. And again, knight a4 is playable, but just to show you a new idea, Johnny Hector played this one. And he's going for that John Nunn idea of bringing the knight to this square with lots of ongoing play. And one more important move after black rules that one out, b4, playing on both areas of the board. And just with bishop b2 and queen d2, we keep full compensation because black is still extremely cramped in these positions. So another attractive line there, bishop d3. Rook c8, we just castle. Now, knight e7 immediately, well, let's castle again. And if knight g6, well, here I quite like bishop e3. We can't play h4 quite yet because we might drop that pawn. Of course, you could experiment with other ideas, but this is a little bit unique. And after something like bishop e7, rook e1, and after, let's say, takes here, we have to capture back. But now we've got knight c3 with a nice easy game. So I suppose the main line, going back to bishop d3, is black taking on d4. And again, you never take here without thinking. Because if you take here without thinking, you could go back into those lines. Suddenly queen b6, and we don't cover these gambit lines. And our new idea, or Magnus's idea that he showed was a new idea, is to just castle often against this move. And even with the queen on d8, this is that, well, I don't know, I say Magnus idea, but I think we should also give a lot of credit to Johnny Hector, who's played this before Magnus. And now queen b6 goes to the next chapter, which we're going to look at. We're going to go knight bd2. The only other unique move I can really see is taking here. Now, do remember, we can take on d4 if we want to, but I just want to watch out for some moves there. I'm not in a rush to do that. Against this one, you have a number of options, and I think rook e1 transposes back into what we know, right? Something like this. But if he takes on c3, let's just show some of this play. Knight takes c3, and now there's a number of moves, but we'll just look at one option, which doesn't involve black playing a6, because we looked at a6 already. So knight g7, and here another idea. You've got so many ideas, but they're often equally good. This move now is stopping black getting his things out normally. If queen b6, let's put the rook on the open line and the rook on e1, fair bit of compensation. And if a6 in this position, because we really are threatening knight b5 straight away. The problem if we go knight b5 here is the knight can move, and black's covering d6. So bishop g5, as well as stopping that knight from moving, if something like h6 here, when we can go knight b5, and all of a sudden black is actually losing. So it's a nice tricky move. This is an attractive little idea, right? So let's have a look. a6, and now we don't need to panic. Rooks on the open files. I like rook e1. It just supports here. I think h6 is a good idea. And now we've got to think, we've done some good stuff with that bishop, but where's it best placed? And like before, I think when a6 has been played, a key thing to remember that often e3 is the best square. Now, Johnny Hector played bishop h4, but when the little rule to remember, when black plays a6, I like the bishop on e3. Without a6, bishop on e3 is not as good. But when a6 has been played, it just gives us this very strong idea of using that b6 square at the right moment. So let's go a little bit further. Now, knight g6. Let me just look at one line here. And you can now take that one and play knight d4, but we're going to go for a riskier plan, funnily enough. And this one is okay, but in this case, it's not as strong as actually when the rook's on c8. And I think actually the best move, and this is what the computer suggests here, is this rook c1. Just getting the rook to the open line. And this is tempting black to take on e5. Let's say he takes the c knight, but now we have a very nice idea in this position, and this is one of the sort of tricks. Can you see a nice idea here? There's two nice ideas, but the strongest idea is not to take on d5 straight away, but to play bishop b6 now. And again, we see the strength of the bishop coming to e3. And if queen takes b6, knight takes d5. And this is actually crushing. Queen comes back, check, king e7, and we can even just grab this one because of rook c7. And after queen d8, rook c2, rook d1. Of course, you're unlikely to get this, but it's nice to show the lines. Now, after rook c1, a better capture is the other knight taking, so we don't have that possibility. But you'd have to be very brave to play this as black. And now we should take on d5. We're trying to open things up. And after we take here, bishop f4 is going to win our piece back. f6 is just too weak with these light squares. And when we do win our piece back here, well, we can get the pawn back, but I like queen a4 check. And the idea is that if queen here, rook takes e6 is crushing, because bishop g6 is coming. Let's have a look. Bishop g6 check. And now king here allows check and rook c7 winning. So king e7, but now we can go to the other side of the board and we have a lot of checks here, and our rook comes into c7 with a winning position. Again, computer lines, the move trainer is probably a better way to test these, you know, not so obvious ideas, but they're very nice new ideas which will give you, in a lot of cases, a winning position. So after this one, b5 is a better idea. And now I like queen a3. So we're stopping black from castling. And this seems like very nice ongoing pressure for us. So if we go back here, I think after rook c1, which is offering that pawn, which black should think twice about taking, as we've seen, but it's nice to offer him some gifts in case he takes it, and our rook is good. Bishop e7 is a much more prudent decision, just trying to concentrate on the king. And now we do go knight a4, which you could have done before, but it's slightly stronger now. And again, taking on e5, very risky for some of the reasons we said. And if castles, we have the discombobulator. What do we put on this square? They're both tempting. In this case, I like the bishop, because maybe our knight wants this square. And after queen b8, yes, the pawn is on pre here, but we have such a nice hold. There's a very nice retreat, bishop b1. And this is aiming at some point to bring the queen to this diagonal. and black is really tied up again. So this line here is often more about thinking what black can do and stopping it whilst improving our pieces. So bringing our rook to e1, bringing our rook to c1, and improving our play, as well as much as looking at our own play, right? And now let's say black does take on e5. Well, in this structure here, we have bishop c7, and after this one, knight b6, winning the exchange with an ongoing attack because of our pieces. Black has a couple of pawns for it, so maybe black's not lost, but we're certainly better because those pawns are not very good and our pieces are great. And let's remember queen c2 is going to force another weakness over there. So a little bit to sort of bear in mind here, but you're really not very likely to get this, hence why I haven't included every line in the video. If you want to check everything again, the move trainer, of course. But bishop d7, well, we looked at earlier on, and knight c6 is most likely to occur. But if the queen does come out here, don't ever, the first rule in these lines, don't ever be in a rush to take back with your pawn on d4. You often have better options. But I think the one key thing to remember in this line is after bishop d3, if takes, we castle. If instead of this one, bishop b5 straight away, then we take here, and we've got to remember this b4 move. In the more mainline ideas, let's say this position, well, taking on d4, again, we castle. And this is the key thing. And remember, we can just play good developing moves. And if black ever plays a6, so the only reason he's going to play a6 is when he feels like he should take on c3 and stop our knight going here. And whenever he plays this move, just always consider this bishop e3 and knight a4, because b6 is a key square. Rook's coming to e1, which is preparing for giving this pawn up. Rook to c1, with a great game in all cases. We'll go on to the main line in the next video.